Welcome to my new channel where we will work with practical programming subjects in web technologies, primarily in JavaScript and PHP. My name is Dalibor and I've been working for 15 years as a developer, focused primarily on the web. I strongly believe that making projects that have a real-life purpose is a very productive way to learn. So in this series we will build one functional CMS or content management system, and we will explain everything from model view controller, organizational pattern, over some popular concepts like dependency injection, even making a simple ORM or object-related mapper, like the active record, for example. And we will use some other concepts like inheritance, abstraction, polymorphism, etc. By the end of this series, we should know how each concept actually solves real-life problems. And if you heard of some of these concepts, or maybe all of them, but you sometimes see they seemed maybe too abstract or too complicated and unnecessary and not applicable to your project, well, stick around and maybe we can discuss them here so that you can see maybe how you can use them on your next project and save yourself some time. So let's start from the basics and see why the MVC pattern is so popular, where MVC stands for Model View Controller, and in this video we will see how we can benefit from it. I assume that you will have servers set up and that you're familiar with basic programming concepts like loops and logical and data structure, as well as some basic PHP syntax. If not, you can still follow along and learn the basics in parallel with this tutorial. I have a XAMPP server on my PC because it's easy to install and works quite well. If you don't have any server, you can just use XAMPP or set up something that you like. And we will start with the traditional way of working to show the advantages of model view controller. Usually you would make one PHP file like index.php, and each page will have its own file. Now I have an index.php. Let me just echo something to see that my server is actually working inside. And here I can see that there is a text inside printed out, which means that my server is working, and this is the same as, of course, index.php. Let me grab some HTML from the bootstrap, and let me grab its source. If I copy this text and I paste it into my index.php file, something like using the EOL, of course, because it's EOF, and here it's EOF, and we have something close to Bootstrap. What we're missing here is a relative path, so I will just fix those relative paths and I will just reuse the get Bootstrap website. Let's just use this one. I guess that these icons can as well benefit from the right URL. That's the starter template CSS here, which actually needs the entire path of this file so that it is displayed correctly. So now we have the same layout as we have on the getbootstrap.com, and we are just using it to have something nicer to look at. Now we have an index page. If we want to have an about us page, we will do the same thing as with index. We will just, let me just copy this file. And let's change the title of this page to About Us. And here, if we go now to About Us, we have About Us page. So now there is About Us PHP, there is Index PHP. Let's make one more, which will be a Contact Us PHP file, right? And here I will just copy the About Us and we will replace it with something. For example, let's take this one with some form fields. Form. Let's paste it here. Let's see how that one goes. Now we're on the contact and we have some form. Let's change the floating labels to something nicer like contact us. And let's pretend that this is our contact form. It doesn't matter what it says here. It's just a placeholder for us to have something to work with. Let's make some links here on the About Us to go to the index.php, right? And the second link will be About Us, which will go to the About Us. And let's make one more that will go to the Contact Us, like this. And now the About Us takes us to About Us page. We go back, we need to go to the home page. Now, since we're on different file, from here we are missing those links back, as you see, About Us, Contact Us, those links that we created. And what we would do, we would take this navigational portion and put it into a separate file that will, for example, let me just cut that out and show you. This file will be something like page elements, and here we would make a file navigation element.php, and here we would put the portions of this page and then include them here. So here we will just remove what we pasted and include another file from here. Now you can see how we're building the page from the sort of outside, where each page knows how to build itself, and that is a fine approach as long as you have several pages on the website. However, for a full dynamic CMS, things get a bit complicated. Here is how would this work in practice. So you have a client here, which is then requesting a home page, and each page of it will then assemble itself with all those different parts that we have, like a navigation, a content, a central content, side content, footer, links, etc. And then you will have the same thing going for the About Us page, the Contact Us page. For all the other pages, each individual page would have to assemble itself, and then at the end it will return the answer back to the server, to the client, sorry. Now the model view controller simplifies this and restructures this so that we can have a much cleaner and much easier way to work. The way the model view controller works is that the client from here, it will basically ask the server or ask a single controller about some of the pages, like home page, About Us, contact page, and then the controller actually has some rules knowing which page and which content and which validation, etc., how to use that in order to retrieve a full page. It will first ask the models for the right content. The models will then assemble the page content, and then the controller would ask views for the layout, and then it will return this assembled page back to the client. In our examples here, we don't have a model, but model would be something here. For example, we would retrieve some data from the database. For example, a page content on the About Us. We would have something like this. We will have an include functions.php file, and then we would have the page content, get page from database, if I could spell, and some About Us ID. And then we would export echo these values somewhere on the page to create what we showed into the slideshow. This would basically be our model, and it would be included in pretty much every page and on pretty much all the places around the world. And it's just a matter of time before you have to get page from database, and then you have to get SEO from database, and then you have to get, I don't know, SEO, and then you would need to fetch the contact information and the sidebars, footers, headers, etc. So there's a lot of duplication where this would go on each and every page here on the index on the top, and slightly different variation would be here on the contact, etc. Now there's a lot of duplication. Of course, you can export this into other files, but functions are very difficult to work with because of sort of contamination of the space. So model view controller is something that we're going to build now and show how it reduces duplication of the code and makes creating it and maintaining the code much easier. The easiest is to start by creating a folders for the model, and then a folder for view, then for control. Now let's remove this page element. It's a proof of concept. Now the index file will not be our page anymore. It will be sort of the entrance to the application, a single point entrance. In the early days, we called it a fuse in a box because it would fuse all the pages from there. And to do that, we will just have some if-else logic here that will determine which controller to be called. I'll come back to that one. It will be our router of sorts. But for now, let's just include a home page controller. Since we don't have it, let's make one homepage controller. And then we will move our HTML from here to a view that we will call, let's make an HTML file. You can make whatever you want. This will be home page. And here we will just paste that HTML, remove everything from here. And in our home page controller, we are just going to include the home page file just to see if we are on the right path. And we're missing homepage HTML because it's located into the view folder, homepage. Okay, so now we have everything as we started. Let's just change the title of the page just to see that we are actually inside of it, that we are not seeing something that we forgot to move it. So it's not a home page, and that's great. Now we need some way to get to the about page, but still using this index PHP. The easiest way is to pass some parameters. For example, let's have like a section equals about. You can choose whatever you wish. You can call this page or portion or whatever. Section works fine, and we can change it easily later. We will have it all conveniently set up in one place when we have the router on the website and everything. For now, we will just determine if section equals to about or if section is empty. And here we will have that if-else routing logic that we mentioned. So let's make a section variable, which we'll get from the get by asking for section, right? We'll use a null coalescing parameter here, where it will return us the default value if it's empty, so the default will be home. And then we will just check on this if this section is equals to about us. Then we are going to include the about us controller, right? Or else, and I guess we should use the switch here, but we will replace this with a real router. So this will be our mini temporary router here. We will have about us page. Let's make this controller and then make the about us view. And in the about us view, we will copy this HTML because that's what we need to display. On here, we will just include the same way as we are doing on the home page. As a matter of fact, about us and the home page could easily be a home or the dynamic page controller, where we are going to pass which page we want to show. For now, let's focus on the model view controller. And here we will have about us HTML page. Now, in theory, this should work by passing the section parameter called about us. We are on the about us page. If we remove everything from here, then we go to the home page, right? Easy peasy. Let's quickly make something similar for the, actually I'll just copy this one to have something for the contact. And let's copy this HTML from the contact page here to the contact page here. And on the contact us, we are actually going to delete this because we're not going to access these pages and files directly anymore. So we want here into the contact page to have a contact us HTML loaded, contact, right? If you can spell it correctly, it's much better. And now we need to extend our router to have the one more else if section equals to contact. Then we are going to include one contact controller, right? Page. Now if we go and have the contact here, we are getting our contact form. Marvelous. So now we have our controllers and our view files. We are missing our model from our presentation. The controllers are basically the part that is pretty much just calling the models and calling the views, and they should contain as little code as possible. They would just need to generally tell you what is going to happen on this page by having some set of rules, right? The models, we don't have them in this case, but the models will be something that would, in our, for example, homepage controller here, we would include some models that will get us the data from the database and that we will then send to the view file for formatting. We will come back to that one, but the models is something that will get us our dynamic data. And the views are, of course, the HTMLs that we are going to send back to the client. In this case, however, you can have a lot of situations where you want the views to be different, like supporting themes maybe in our CMS. Maybe we want to do a redesign. Each website basically has a redesign in a couple of years. And that is very convenient because then you can just replace the views here while keeping the models and keeping the controller the same. You don't have to change anything here. And in the views, you are just outputting something else, for example. That way you can just change the views and have them be different. Also, if you are making the single page application, for example, you might not even use the views because you will just output the models directly or some formatted data and some JSON string. That way you basically don't need the views at all. And it's very easy to support single page applications by just having a API here instead of the views part of the website. And again, the models will include pretty much everything from our logical point of view, like the pages from the database, users, but also user validation, some services that we're going to use. And a lot of frameworks use this organizational pattern for a reason, like Laravel, Symfony, CodeIgniter, Fuel PHP. And this way of working makes it very easy for you to separate the logic, not just the files, but the logic and organization of all the files and functionality. For example, typical example where people might do it wrong, but the way we did it by using the functions is to put formatting of the data right when getting the file from the database or in the model in our case. And that is a very difficult thing to maintain because you might want to change the, for example, date format or the number format or the money format. You want to do something with it. And if you format it differently while getting it from the database or maybe getting it from some other service, then you have to work with that formatted data. By having the separate views part where we're just doing all that formatting here into the views portion or into our HTMLs, it's much easier to maintain a robust application that we are going to maintain over several years, hopefully. Does this explanation make any sense to you? Do you care writing me a comment if you think that this can be explained better, and I will address it perhaps in more details in the following videos. Also remember to subscribe for new videos while you are down there. Hopefully we see how this organizational structure will help us with reducing the duplication of the code and also having control of the code, what is going where on a single page, on a single place in the application. So to summarize, the model view controller organizational pattern allows us to organize files based on their roles they have in the application. It generally makes it easier for us to understand where is what happening. It also reduces the duplication of files and codes because as you've seen, we have only one place where we are calling our view files, and we will see that especially useful when we get to the models. And also model view controller adds flexibility because it separates logic, as mentioned, where are things going to happen. And as mentioned, models should take care of actual data being manipulated, retrieved, stored from databases, and views. They should care only about the presentation to the user, how to format file, which HTML to put around the data, etc. And controllers should organize or basically control things around. And this makes code much easier to write and, which is more important, easy to collaborate in a team and easy to change and maintain over time in the future. A code could be much more dynamic, and having all this in place basically reduces the overall cost of the development, which is a very important factor. And you can get this source that I'm writing here into the description, And click on the next videos in this series where we are going to focus on the controller part and talk something about the inheritance and basics of models. And I will see you in the next video. Here is a joke for you.